for a second. If I could, I need you to help me complete some sentences that have some blanks in them. And the only rule is that you have to complete them with one of two words. The words are wish or hope. So, here we go. Complete these sentences with wish or hope. And you can just shout it out. I blank my favorite team wins the Super Bowl. I hope. I wish. All right. Next one. I'm thankful it rained today. See, you never know when you're making these things ahead of time if it's really going to happen if I tell you. All right, next one. When you wish. Oh yeah, that's a wish. Okay, next one. I hope my friend gets that job. Okay, next one. I hope my friend, I wish my friend would call. It can kind of go both ways, can't it? We use hope and wish kind of interchangeably sometimes, because in a lot of ways they tend to mean the same thing. So would you turn to somebody near you or next to you or around you or a couple people, and would you tell them the difference that you see between hope and wish? What's the difference between hope and wish? Go ahead. All right, did you figure it out? Okay, so just a couple ideas. What's the difference between hope and wish? Matt?
Hope's what you believe, wish is what you hope for.
Hope is what you believe, wish is what you hope for. How about hope is what you wish for? Don?
Hope comes from the heart, wish comes from the mind.
All right, hope comes from the heart, wish comes from the mind. Nancy?
We decided that hope was more out-serving and wish was more self-serving.
Hope is more out-serving, wish is more in-serving. Wish is our will, hope is God's will.
Wish is less confident. Hope is sure.
Hope is sure, wish is less confident. Okay? Cool. It's a little hard to pin down. Because we use these words kind of interchangeably. We could put one in for another, and wish is kind of like hope, and hope is kind of like wish in some ways, although there are some differences too. Oftentimes we talk about wishful thinking, or we have hopeful thinking, or when we hope in something or we wish for something, we really want it to happen, and we hope it happens, or we wish it happens, or we just somehow want that thing to happen. And what's interesting, I think, is if we take all this meaning or understanding of hope, and then we bring it into when we read the Bible, and when the Bible mentions hope, then we've got to figure out, is that what the Bible's talking about when it's talking about hope? Is the Bible talking about a wish? Or is it talking about more than a wish? Is it talking about just wanting something to happen? Or is it talking about more than just wanting this thing to happen without any basis for it actually happening? So what we're going to do is dig into hope, because that's the first theme of Advent, and that's something that's important enough, because it's a theme of Advent, to look into to find out what is it that God wants us to know about hope. Because I think it's a very deep and rich kind of thing that can guide and help and support us anytime and in any season. And what I love about this church is that we tend to not just skirt along the surface of questions. I think we tend to dig in, and we tend to go deeper with things, not just asking the simple question, but trying to dig in deeper and find out, well, why is this true, and why is it this way, and why is it not that way? And we don't tend to be satisfied with simple answers. And I tend to be that way too. I like digging in deeper to find out what's really at the core and the cause of this whole thing. So there are a lot of places we could look, and there are some simple places that we could look to find out what the Bible's talking about when it's talking about hope. For example, we could go to some of the stories of Jesus, which at the end oftentimes have a nice, neat, happy ending to it. And we could find some hope there. Or we could look at some verses in the Apostle Paul where he's talking about things that are very positive and very uplifting and very encouraging. There's lots of hope passages there. We could go to the Psalms where there's lots of psalms and songs about hope. But since we like to dig a little deeper and go to maybe the more unlikely places, how about we go to an unlikely place to look for some hope? You ready? All right. If you have a Bible, flip open to Lamentations. If you do not have a Bible, you have a phone or a tablet, you can tap there, or you can look up on the screen and we'll get to Lamentations. Anybody read Lamentations lately? I'm with you. I mean, why would you read Lamentations? It's not on our number one list of if you want to know about Jesus, read Lamentations. Lamentations, as it sounds like, is a book full of laments. And what is a lament? A lament is a sad, sad song sung at a sad, sad funeral. It is not the kind of thing that encourages you. It is not the kind of thing that makes you smile. It is just a forlorn, deep, sad song. Lamentations is a collection of 5 of these kinds of sad songs. These are called laments. Laments are also complaints. If you've got a complaint or a gripe or you've got something you're venting about or you're frustrated about, a lament is your way to go. It's how you pour yourself out and how you get all your frustration or your anger or your complaints out. That's a lament. And Lamentations is 5 of these in a row. So not always the most uplifting book. Some of the words that appear in Lamentations, here's a little sample of some of the words that appear there. Anger, fierce, weeping, bitter, defeat, desolate. That is just chapter 1. And it gets better from there. So, does this sound like a place to find hope? Oh, you bet it is. We're going to find some great hope here. And seriously though, isn't it true that sometimes hope seems to come most easily or most readily when we're the most desperate for it? I mean, when we're ready for it, we're more motivated to find it, we're more open to it, we're looking for it. And in Lamentations, this is a sea of laments, and what if, in the middle of that, there's this beautiful period of hope? If you Google the most popular verses in Lamentations, the most popular verses on hope, you find verses in Lamentations. There's not a lot of them, there are only a few, but there are some of the most popular verses on hope in Lamentations. So we're going to look at them. Lamentations was written by Jeremiah. Jeremiah wrote the book before Lamentations that's called Jeremiah. Jeremiah was a prophet, and he was a prophet way back in the Old Testament for the nation when there was a tough period of time. They were going through disobedience, they were going through God disciplining them. It was not a happy time, and this was all of Jeremiah's life. So Jeremiah's book, which is a very long book, is all about him being God's voice to the people about the things they were doing wrong and what God was going to bring on them. Jeremiah is not a very uplifting or encouraging book for the most part, although there's a few light periods in there, which we've looked at before. But on the whole, it's a tough, deep book. The next book is Lamentations, and Jeremiah wrote Lamentations, continuing on some of the same themes, but it's like he steps it up a little bit. Because when Jeremiah wrote Lamentations, he wrote it with a style of poetry. The book is filled with 5 laments, as I mentioned, and they are all poems. Now, I am not an expert on poetry. I have never been, and I never will be, and I never claim to be. Poetry is not my strong suit. When I was in high school, I took a creative writing class. And when I took that creative writing class, we had a unit on poetry. At the end of the unit, we were assigned to write a poem. This is probably one of the most difficult assignments that I ever had in high school, for me personally, but I got to write a poem. So when I wrote this poem, and I'm having a tough time with this, because what drove me really crazy about writing a poem is that I was trying to craft, this style and this rhythm and these words that fit together and this whole flow of this thing, which I could have said in like 10 words if I was just straight up narrative telling you about it. But I was trying to craft this whole story and this poem about it and paint this picture of it with words, and it was driving me nuts. Because you could say it in much simpler ways. And I realized that poetry is very hard to write. Because you're trying to create this whole setting and this whole picture and this whole image of something. I also learned that when you write poetry, at least most people when they write poetry, they don't write it about unimportant things. People tend to write poetry about important things. You know, things that you can't just describe, but things that you have to write as a poem and to create a feeling and to help people understand and internalize so that then they might discover and get this whole thing that you're trying to communicate. Things that we write poetry about can't always be expressed in other ways. That's kind of what Jeremiah is doing, because this is Jeremiah's world. He's trying to help people understand the feeling and the depth and what is going on in their life and in their situation. So, 4 of the 5 poems in Jeremiah are written in a certain specific poetic style. And it's the style called an acrostic. And you know what an acrostic is? It's where you have a letter of something and the next letter of something, and you put all those first letters together and they spell out some word or some phrase or something. Well, in Jeremiah's style, his acrostic that he's spelling out with each line is the entire alphabet. So each chapter in Jeremiah's book is spelling out the alphabet at the beginning of each line. As in, the first line is A, the second line is B, the third line is C, all the way through the alphabet. And some people have said, well, this is a really good thing because you're trying to give a full and complete sense of whatever you're talking about. Like, if I'm going to tell you my pain, if I'm going to complain, if I'm going to give you a lament, I'm going to do it from A to Z. I'm going to do it as fully and completely as I can do. So this is the biggest lament I can give you. So that's kind of Jeremiah's take or his way about this. He's going to write these laments that are giving the full and the big picture on these laments. So, Lamentations is 5 of these. 5 of these in a row in a nice collection. But there's an interesting difference between each of these laments. If you were with us a couple weeks ago, we were talking about gentleness. We talked about the fact that oftentimes the meaning is not at the beginning or the end. The meaning is in the middle. The same might be true in Jeremiah. Because if you look at all these 5 chapters in Jeremiah, there's an interesting difference. The first and the second, and the 4th and the 5th chapters, they have this acrostic pattern. This go through the alphabet, A is at the beginning of line 1, B is at the beginning of line 2, C is at the beginning of line 3, and they follow this pattern. But then you get to chapter 3, and it's totally different. Because instead of each line being A, B, C, D, E, he expands it and lengthens it, and he makes 3 lines be A, and 3 lines be B, and 3 lines be C. So it's like all of a sudden he's stretching this whole lament out, and it's long. So if we compare, if you do, you can flip open your Bible and compare the lengths of these chapters, it looks like this. Chapter 3 is 3 times as long as the other chapters. And by the way, the Hebrew alphabet is 22 letters. That's why that's actually the whole alphabet. So they didn't skip 4 letters. That's how their alphabet works. So when I look at that, I think, okay, chapter 1's interesting, chapter 2's interesting, but wait a minute, there's got to be something in chapter 3. Because if he's going to lengthen it, if he's going to do this big thing, because it's awfully structured, it's awfully rhythmic, if he's going to do this, there's got to be something in there that's worth looking at. But to get to chapter 3, we've got to wade through 1 and 2. So we're going to do it real quick. Chapter 1, you already saw some words and some samples, right? They weren't too happy. Chapter 2, we get to chapter 2, and these are some of the words that are in chapter 2. Dishonoring, brought down, strengthen, vanish, anger, withdraw, enemy, consume, raging, kill, fury. I'm not sure it's any better. In fact, it might be a little bit worse. Because what was happening is the people weren't just describing their situation as awful and dire and horrible. Now they were taking it personally. And these descriptions are actually in a language where they're more personal to them. They're taking it on themselves and they're feeling the weight of this whole thing. You get to chapter 3. Now it's not only Jeremiah describing the situation, it's not only Jeremiah saying that it's personal to everybody else. Now Jeremiah is starting to say, he's taking on the weight of all this junk that's happening. He's taking on this feeling and this weight, and it gets really personal. So he has phrases like this in chapter 3. God has turned God's hand against me. God has made me grow old and broken my bones. God has buried me in a dark place. God has trapped me. God refuses to listen to my prayers. God is willing to attack me. People will laugh at me. God has filled me with bitterness. I mean, Jeremiah is feeling the weight of all this stuff. This is chapter 3. And then in the middle of chapter 3, we get this. Yet I still dare to hope when I remember this. The faithful love of the Lord never ends. His mercies never cease. Great is his faithfulness. His mercies begin afresh each morning. I say to myself, the Lord is my inheritance. Therefore, I will hope in him. The Lord is good to those who depend on him, to those who search for him. So it is good to wait quietly for salvation from the Lord. I mean, no wonder these are the most popular verses in Jeremiah. I mean, that's some of the best word and hope about hope in the Bible. I mean, that's good stuff. I mean, after lamenting and complaining and venting for chapters on end, then Jeremiah finally lands here. And he finally finds, obviously, some sort of hope. And where does that hope come from? I love what he says. He says, I still dare to hope. It's like he's saying, here's the line in the sand. I'm daring, I'm risking, I'm staking my life on the fact that I can hope even now. Even when things look horrible, even when I don't feel good, even when I'm feeling the pain of everything else, even when it looks awful, I'm still daring to hope. He's not wishing, is he? No, he's hoping. I mean, it's this confident, rooted, I'm not waiting for God. I'm expecting that God's going to do this. I know that this is going to happen, so I still dare to hope. So where does the hope come from? I love the next line. Yet I still dare to hope when I remember this. He's not hoping because he just wakes up one morning and he decides, today is going to be a day when I hope. Or I just feel better today, so I'm just going to hope. Or I'm just going to muster up the courage to hope. I mean, that's not where hope comes from. We don't just wake up someday and all of a sudden we're hopeful. Hope has to come from somewhere. And for Jeremiah, it comes when he remembers this. When he remembers all these things about God and all these things that God has done. And he said, if God can do that, if God has done that for these people that I knew, if God has done that for these people that are my ancestors, then you better believe that I'm going to stake my claim on the fact that God can do all that in my life. So I'm daring, I'm risking that I can hope even now. Because Jeremiah remembers that God's faithful love never ends. Jeremiah remembers in this passage that God's mercies never cease. Jeremiah remembers that God's faithfulness is great. And Jeremiah remembers that his mercies begin new every day. And I think the deal is that we have to choose what we're going to dwell on. We can choose, we have the freedom, the full freedom, to wake up each day and choose what are we going to dwell on. And this is, of course, easier said than done. But we have to choose what we're going to dwell on. Are we going to dwell on the tragedies and the crises and the things that happen in every one of our lives? They all happen to all of us. Or are we going to dwell on something that lifts us beyond that? Because we can dwell and we can drown in the things that are hard, can we not? Because life is hard, is it not? It is for everybody. And everybody has a story, and everybody has an experience, and everybody's story can probably top everybody else's story. Because life hurts. But where are we going to dwell? See, if Jeremiah answers that question, he says, I feel it, I experience it, it's horrible, it's deep, but I'm not going to dwell there only. I'm going to dwell somewhere else, because I dare to hope beyond what I'm experiencing. When we were starting RiverCross Church, many of you were part of these initial conversations, and you probably remember some of these. When we were initially starting the church, we were thinking that we would start the church during the summertime, which we did. And we decided, well, we have to do some things before we start in order to lead up to it, in order to announce the church to people, and in order to especially communicate to kids and families about the fact that we're starting this church. And one of the things I recall is that we thought at the beginning, if we're going to start anything during the summer, what do churches do during the summer? They do Vacation Bible School. Let's start with a Vacation Bible School. And very quickly, we realized there's no way that can happen. We cannot, at the end of May, throw together a Vacation Bible School by July and have it be any good. So we decided to table that. And we decided we can't do a quality Vacation Bible School, so let's dream in a different way. And I remember the conversation we had where that Vacation Bible School was still on the back burner. We knew we were going to do it, but we just didn't know when. And then when Christmas time came around, we realized, wait a minute, this is the perfect opportunity. Because nobody else does a Vacation Bible School during Christmas, and it's a great open opportunity to teach about Christ right before Christmas and talk about the meaning of Christmas, and it all kind of flowed together. And we created the Spy Company last year. And this year we get to do the second Spy Company. When the RC Spy Company was born, which you can see a few pictures of up here, it involved, many of you were involved in it, a few crazy months of dreaming and planning and throwing this thing together. We had an absolutely brilliant time investigating the clues to Christmas and finding out what it was and what it meant to celebrate Christmas. Well, now that we're doing this for year number 2, I hope you'll join me in daring to hope. As Ryan kind of talked about with the kids, we have a lot to be thankful for, we have a lot to pray for, and we have a great opportunity with Vacation Bible School to hope for something more. Because last year, we created a really fun and a really good Vacation Bible School that made a lot of kids have a lot of fun, and a lot of adults have a lot of fun too. And we could earn the reputation of being a church that has a very fun and engaging and entertaining and vibrant Vacation Bible School. But that's not enough. Because what we need to be doing is helping people understand who Christ is who have never understood Christ before. And what if this is a venue to do that? I hope, not I wish, I hope that this is a year where we can see people understand God's love who've never understood God's love before. And people come to accept Christ, especially kids who come to this Vacation Bible School to accept Christ who have never accepted Christ before. I mean, that is why we created RiverCross Church, so that more people would discover the love of Christ in their lives. And I believe that God created this unique Vacation Bible School as a vehicle to do that. So if you would, I want to encourage you to do a few things regarding this Vacation Bible School. The first is to pray. Pray specifically for kids who come, and pray that they would find the love of Christ when they come. The second thing is to invite people. Invite anybody who looks like they're between kindergarten and 6th grade. There are cards on the back table. I hope you would grab 2 or 3 or 20. Stick them in your purse, in your pocket, in your coat, in your car, in your anywhere. And whenever you see somebody, even if you don't know them, it can be as simple as, hey, my church is doing this really cool thing that we did last year. It was an amazing thing. If you have the time free, here you go. All the information's on the card. I mean, just drop it with them, and who knows if they might come or what God might do with it. Invite as many people as you can invite. And then the third thing is to help. Right now, we have enough people to pull this off without a problem. So we don't have to have help. But we want help. Because the more people we have being able to engage with kids and with adults and with families and whoever's here and get to know them and build relationships with them, the more people we have fixing snacks and stacking papers, the more people we have acting and doing crazy things, whatever it is, help with it. And that could even be as simple as showing up. And trust me, we'll find a place. Because there are a lot of really fun places to serve in this. I'm daring to hope that people come to know Christ who have never known Christ before. And I want to see God fulfill the next step of God's purpose through RiverCross Church through this. Would you pray with me?